I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here, blessed to be at the NRB convention in Dallas, Texas with Pat Boone.
And I'm Pat Boone.
You are. You know, it's been wonderful growing up with seeing your TV series, movies and all that, and your music, singing.
Yep.
And you've also written music and all that. So
I keep coming out of the woodwork everywhere, every which way. Movies, television, recordings, books, personal appearances, but always hoping to emphasize the fact that I'm Pat Boone Christian. I'm not saying that bragging on myself, I'm bragging on Jesus.
It's so wonderful to brag about him, you know.
Yeah.
So, do you have a website, Pat? People can learn more about
Boone's
you.
Biz. Boone's Biz at
Boone's
AOL.
Biz.
Just Boone's, B-I-Z, Boone's Biz at AOL. And I
at AOL.com.
And I pay attention when people, I can't answer everything right away, but I try to get back eventually when people do contact me, especially if they're asking me about something that's biblical or Christian.
Well, there's one issue about Debbie Boone. Debbie Boone. You know, I really love that song, You Light Up My Life. So what's happening with Debbie Boone? She's
still singing. She's a grandmama. You know you're old when your baby daughters are grandparents.
Oh, okay.
And my baby daughter, and Lindy was number 3, Lindy number 2, she's just learned that she's about to be a grandparent now.
Oh, wow.
And Cherry has 4 grandkids already, my oldest daughter. So Debbie is still singing on certain occasions. COVID has kept her kind of out of singing opportunities, and me too.
Yeah, for a lot of music.
But she's still very capable, sings great, beautiful, looks like one of her own daughters.
Oh, okay. So how many children do you have?
I had 4 daughters, 16 grandkids, and now 10 great-grandkids and 3 more coming that I know about.
Oh, okay. So what would you like to share with else with our viewers? A key thing that of your concern could be about Israel, about America, where we're headed.
Well, I am greatly concerned about Israel because the enemies of Israel are rising up in great ferocity. It's so amazing. They're just 10, 15 million people in this world. They have a small, compared to the rest of the world, small piece of land that God gave them to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to the people of Israel forever. The Arab community has 1,000 times more land, more resources, more everything than little Israel, but they despise Israel, which is irrational. There's no good reason. God gave this little land to the people of Israel. It is theirs, and what I try to let people know is when you come against Israel, you are coming against God. And that's not a good place to occupy. I mean, God does not lose, for one thing. God's will be done. And he will bless those, he said, who bless Israel, and he will curse those who curse Israel. It's one thing just not to be on God's side, but to know that he will curse you.
Oh, that's
if
serious.
You curse Israel.
I think you'll be referencing Genesis 12:3 that talks about the blessings for those that bless Israel, and curses for those that curse. But I also think of that scripture in Joel 3:2 about God's anger about dividing up Israel.
Yes,
and yet we hear so often people are talking about, oh, a Palestinian state is going to solve the problem, giving away Israel's land is going to make peace.
The Palestinian claim ended when David slew Goliath. He was the Philistine champion, the Palestinian champion. They didn't accept that as their defeat totally. And so they kept coming back over the years, but they've never had a government of their own, a nation of their own. They just kept wanting to run Israel out so they could take that one. And yet they could have twice, 10 times the size in Lebanon or Syria or those other nations that immediately surround Israel. But no, they've got to have that piece of land. They want that one. That's what they're fighting about.
Or even all of Israel, not being happy until they get all of Israel.
Right. They don't want there to be an Israel.
Not an Israel
They don't
at all,
want there to be Jews. That's what's so irrational about it. So it's something that the Lord is certainly, he's God, It's going to work out the way He wants it to work.
Yes.
And we just want to be on His side.
We definitely want to be on His side. And, and I was just thinking just now about that wonderful movie, God's Not Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't you part of that?
I was not part of the first one, but I was a significant role in God's Not Dead 2.
That's the one, God's Not Dead 2.
Yeah.
So I so loved that. It was so encouraging, you know, and to know that God's not dead, God is in control. That reminds me also of this song by Twyla Paris, God is in control.
Oh yeah, Twyla, I love Twyla.
It's so, the music is so leading to worship and praise of God, and it's a blessing that God has blessed you with this music career. You've had quite the career and experience with music and writing songs. So on that website, you said your website is Boone's Biz.
Mm-hmm. Boone'sBiz@AOL.com. Now that's my
email address.
But there's also PatBoone.com.
PatBoone.com.
PatBoone.com is where you get exposed to. I mean, one is just an address where you try to email me, but PatBoone.com is all the music, books, activities that I've been doing for all these years and am doing now, because I'm still very active. In fact, it has been discovered that I've recorded more songs than any other artist in history, some 2,300 songs.
Yeah, I was reading that recently, and I'm also thinking about the long history of Dick Van Dyke as well. That he has been kind of a ham, and he loves being in front of a crowd, but he's still going strong.
Yeah, he just got the Kennedy honors, you know, and wonderful actor, wonderful human being, really.
How well do you
know him? Quite well. In fact, when I was doing the Pat Boone Chevy show, the youngest guy ever to have his own network television musical variety show, Dick Van Dyke was a guest before he did the Dick Van Dyke show or anything. He was just a guy that was sort of up and coming, like some of the others major stars were. And so I had to leave my show for 13 weeks in the summertime to make a movie twice. And so that first time I let Dick Van Dyke take over my time slot, and it was his first show ever, the Pat Boone replacement for the summer.
Oh, wow.
And then later, the next summer, I let Andy Williams have my time slot, and it was his first show.
Wow. And I remember Andy Williams' show was a show as well.
And they went on to great things, but, you know, I just was happy to use my show or the time slot to let them shine, which they certainly did, and justifiably so. He and I have been buddies ever since then, all these years. I knew his brother Jerry as well too.
Oh, he was funny.
Yeah.
I think of My Mother the Car.
Yeah.
Actually.